and welcome to this episode of the Rise to Reign podcast. I'm your host, Amy Killingsworth, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Kacia Fitzgerald. And I'm just going to go ahead and read her bio because it is extensive, so I don't want to miss anything. Keisha is a multi-passionate entrepreneur, speaker, and podcaster who's on a mission to help women unapologetically share their voice and message with the world. She is the host of the top-rated podcast, Empower Her, with over 4 million downloads in the first 3 years. Wow, that's impressive. Has a global community of 2.6 thousand personal growth obsessed women, founder of 2 podcast courses that help women launch or grow their own podcasts, and the host of an in-person women empowerment events. She found that what's often holding women back is the thoughts they think about who they are and what they are capable of. So she takes her knowledge from working with hundreds of entrepreneurs over the years, paired with her high energy, bubbly personality, and a come with me, let's figure this out together approach to light a fire under their booty and to get them out of their own way and go. I love that. And it couldn't be more aligned with the work that I am called and know that I'm here to do in the world. So welcome, Keisha. Is there anything that you would add to that bio that we didn't, maybe that gives us a picture of who you are that wasn't mentioned?
Yeah, I'm so excited to connect with you. I feel like we do have very similar vibes of how we want to inspire women to take action and just like build lives and businesses that they're obsessed with. But I think like what the bio doesn't share, because so often on social media, you see this carefully curated content and a bio is like this highlight reel. But truth of the matter is I'm someone who is constantly just trying to freaking figure it out as I go. And I'm buckled up for the whole journey of entrepreneurship, which means sometimes having your best day and your worst day where you're like ugly crying on your bathroom floor with your snot and your mascara getting together and you're like choking on it in your mouth, like in the same hour. That's really what it's like, right? And kind of follow my own intuition and do the thing that feels aligned. And I've quit so many things and I've failed so many times and just gotten so used to getting myself back up that I'm just really obsessed with the journey of this and helping women just step into really this inner knowing that they're capable and that if they're gifted this vision for their life, their business, their relationships, their health, whatever it is that they're working on, like it's because they can figure it out and it's not actually about the hows. So yeah, I'm just excited to dive more into this conversation.
I love that. And it's so true. I always say that entrepreneurship, like life, is like the highest highs and the lowest lows. But that's the human experience, right? Like if we want to really enjoy the highs, we have to experience the lows. And that is where in the lows is where the growth happens. And that's where we're learning the lessons, and they aren't always fun and they aren't always comfy, but that's where we really learn to expand beyond our borders and our comfort zone and expand and create the container for more. So can you tell us, I love that you are obsessed with the mental aspect and the mindset piece. And you mentioned that you had overcome some of your own blocks. Can you tell us kind of what that process has looked like for you?
Yeah. So I think one thing that a lot of women listening into this might connect with is we are taught not to compare ourselves to other people, right? And we cognitively know that it's not helpful because we actually really never know what's going on behind closed doors and nobody's going to have the same experience as us. But one thing that I've really had to navigate through, especially as I'm reaching for bigger goals, that I'm not yet the person that can accomplish that goal. And that's part of the reason to sign up to have a goal like that is you become that person in the process. Or when I'm starting something new and I have to kind of start at the bottom and work my way back up again, is I have to remind myself not to compare myself to a prior version of myself when the circumstances were different. Because full transparency, I actually don't struggle a lot with comparison with other people. It's a lot more with me when I'm making these transitions and I have to start at the bottom. Because no matter what happens when you're doing something new, no matter how long you've been in this space, when you're doing something for the first time, you just suck at the beginning. Like there's no like cute way to put it.
Everybody does. That's such an empowering thing to hear, is that the people that you see that are rocking a stage public speaking or podcasting or writing or whatever it is, they at some point were a sucky beginner. Every single person, and you can't compare your beginning with their middle or their further on in their journey.
Yeah. And I think about that a lot of times now where like people are like, Keisha, we're almost at 6 million downloads on our podcast and it's growing like crazy, which is so cool. But my first episode, I mean, I was sweating in all the places that you like didn't even know that you could sweat. And I was having the same fears that come up for everybody of like, oh my gosh, what if nobody listens in? And then the next fear of what if people do listen in? What are they going to think about me? What am I going to make that mean? Since
Right.
as humans, we're meaning creating machines, obviously.
Yes.
So I think like one thing that I really want women listening into this to think about is what is your success criteria for yourself in this exact season? Because it can't be the same as every other season. Maybe right now your kids are sick or your in laws are in town, you're navigating grief or anxiety, or it's a major change. Even if it's a good change, change still requires a grief of what we already knew. Like, right, change
Yes.
is loss of the familiar, right? So,
Yes.
that our bodies are adjusting to that too, which means that we also have to be really compassionate with ourselves as we're working towards big goals and have big visions for what we want to do, to not tell ourselves that just because at the beginning of something new or just because the circumstances are different that we're not capable. It's just we have to be on our own team. So I like
Right.
to go through life thinking about what is my success criteria for me to feel like I'm winning the day today in this season. And if
Yes.
I'm in like a go mode, let's freaking rock it, and I'm feeling really good, maybe those success criteria, the tiny little things that I want to do for that day, are bigger. But maybe if I'm in a season where I'm just like struggling and mentally I'm just having an off day, maybe it's just I'm walking 30 minutes and I'm drinking half my body weight in ounces of water and I'm trying to listen to a podcast where I can borrow belief from somebody else so I don't throw in the towel. So it's something that I think that I've had to personally learn to navigate. And now I feel really, like I'm in control of having this mindset that actually serves me no matter what season I'm in, because I can quickly recalibrate because
Yes.
of having to struggle through it before.
Yeah.
And I actually recently just had this kind of brought to my attention where my husband lost his dad about 9 months ago. And the day before we got a call that his cancer was back and we needed to go to Seattle, we lived in Austin, Texas at the time. And the day before, I was crushing through stuff. I'm like speaking at virtual events. And I'm like creating all this content, like doing all these things. Like I'm crushing it. And I feel like I'm on top of the world, as happens in entrepreneurship sometimes. And then it's like as soon as we got that call, everything was drastically different. And when we got
Mhm.
up to Seattle and I'm trying to do the things that I need to do to maintain my business while also having this priority of like being there with my family, is I had to remind myself in real time, like the success criteria that I had even yesterday is not applicable now. And if
Overnight.
I actually have that criteria, I'm going to feel like I'm failing. I'm in a downward spiral because our brains like to look for evidence to confirm whatever our thoughts are to be true, right? Self-confirming bias.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I got to be careful about the story that I'm telling myself about this season and what I'm capable of. So
Yes.
that's something that's always been on my mindset ever really since then, that I'm recognizing that's a big strength of mine now, that I can kind of course correct when I need to and recalibrate.
That is so powerful. That clarity alone of knowing what your priority is right now and what success means to you in this season of your life.
Yeah.
And, I'm 47 years old, so I've been through a few seasons, and
Yeah.
that is something I'm kind of processing as you're talking about it. And I wouldn't necessarily have like taught about it or even put
Yeah.
it into those categories or that container. But I had a similar conversation with myself just in the last couple of weeks, because it's like, what is success mean for you as a person, as a woman right now?
Mhm.
Because when we're in business, we so often are like, well, success is this dollar figure, or success is this rank in my company, or success is this promotion, or success is this thing.
Mhm.
And for a long time, I went through a really painful, chaotic divorce about 4 years ago. And for a long time, I was single and just like jamming on my business. And that's kind of where I felt safe and comfortable and at home. And then this new relationship enters my life and it throws everything into chaos. And I had
Yeah.
a really hard time with that, because in my mind, and this is what you said to your point about how you think about things and what you make them mean. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, this is a distraction from
Yeah.
the thing that's really important, or this is messing me up because now I'm moving slower, or don't have the focus or the drive in this area because I'm over here. And I had to have a moment with myself where I'm like, wait a second, what's important to me right now in this season. And it is like building this relationship and exploring what's there for the future. And it's like, I'm not going to quit my business or fall apart or anything, but it's okay to shift focus in a season to
Yes.
build something that is maybe a higher priority than just business and just money. And that's important, but it's not the only thing, because when you get to the end of the day, and when you've had successes, it's like sometimes when you get to the end of a goal, you're like, wait, like this didn't
Yeah.
give me this didn't give me the what I wanted. And you have to kind of rethink what will give me that, like, what am I really after? How do I want to feel? And at the end of the day, that's relationships, like that's your children, that's your friends, that's your spouse, your significant other, it's your parents, and you sounds like you had that moment of clarity where you lost someone really close to you and important for you. And it takes your focus away from the business. And that's okay. That's
Yeah.
a good thing. And if you beat yourself up mentally, you're not fully in the other thing that you're meant to like focus on and be there, for your husband and for your family and process through this grief and walk that season out. And so
Yes.
it's such a powerful message, especially for women to hear, is that you're right where you're supposed to be all the time, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Even when it doesn't
you're
feel like it.
even when it doesn't feel like it, because there's something there for you to learn. If you're in pain, like, like we mentioned, if you're in pain, if you're, if you feel stuck or whatever it is, there's something there to learn, and you're going to get some codes for your mission in the future. Your future self needs that experience to move on into the future.
Yes. It's like Steve Jobs quote that says you can't connect the dots until you're looking backwards, where you learn, like, like you were kind of leading into, of like, it's the character and the grit and the resourcefulness that you learn when it's hard, that you actually need those skills. You can't learn that when it's rainbows, butterflies, happy little unicorns and you're
Right.
crushing it all. But
Yeah.
you need those skills in order to get you where you want to go. But you also need to go through those seasons of contrast so that when you do get where you want to go, you actually get to feel the deep sense of pride of knowing that you earned it and that you had
Mhm.
to become a different person in order to accomplish it. Because so often we set these goals, and a lot of times we don't even really actually know why we set these goals. We think that we should have these goals, and we assume that we're going to know the feeling that we're going to get when we accomplish those, which is what we really want, or
Yes.
what other people are going to think about us if we accomplish those goals, and what they're going to make it mean about who we are as humans, which is why I'm always really a huge proponent of making sure that the process in pursuit of getting to those goals is actually fulfilling for you, and that you're stopping along the way to give yourself opportunities to feel proud and recognize your own growth. Because I don't want you to get where you wanted to go, like you even just mentioned, Amy, of like, get where you want to go, look around and be like, crap, like this wasn't worth it. As in, you look back at the path that you took towards getting there and you're like, my relationships were put on the back burner. I wasn't present where my feet are. I didn't show up for these things. I burned a candle at both ends. I'm not fulfilled by this. Because what might happen then is you throw in the towel completely. When if you would have focused a little bit more on the process and your alignment in pursuit of the goals, you'd get where
Yes.
you wanted to go still. And then you look back at the path, you're like, if I can do that, I wonder what else I can do. And then it's not just about you. It's about the other women out there who need to see someone in your exact circumstances with
No,
your situation,
there it
see
is.
what's possible for them. Right. And then
Absolutely.
it's worth it. It's worth it to navigate through those seasons where it feels like you're pushing a monster truck tire up a hill and you're like, oh, is this ever going to work out? It's like, you got to have that grit built in you so you can handle business curveballs, but more importantly, life curveballs.
Yes. And that confidence, I mean, there's no other way around it. I'm a parent, I have 3 kids, 2 of them
Yeah.
teenagers, and there's no other way. I tell them all the time, there's one way in life to build confidence, just one, and that's to have a problem
Yeah.
and to either persevere through the problem, because we can't always change things about our circumstance, or to get resourceful and to solve your problem. So
Yeah.
you're either there to learn resilience, you're there to learn perseverance, or you're there to actually solve that problem. And at the end of the day, we're all here to solve problems for the world and for society and for other people. And so if we never have any problems, then we never have to flex our muscles to be able to, like you mentioned, develop the grit to
Yeah.
sustain us through our calling, really, and what we have to do to learn the keys that we need to give to others. if we make it mean, oh, this hurts equals it's bad. Oh, this
Yeah.
is hard equals it's bad. That's not the way that you think about hardship. That's not the way that you think about struggle. You think about it as, and this is a key entrepreneurial skill, I think, is you think about like, okay, here's my opportunity. Here's my
Mhm.
opportunity to learn something. Here's my opportunity to set a boundary. Here's my opportunity to learn to honor myself and not betray myself. That was a
Yeah.
big one for me in business. And we talked about the network marketing space, and my team has heard me say it 1,000 times, that network marketing is a personal development program with a paycheck attached, and it will
Yep.
it will break wide open all of your dysfunctional patterns of relating, whether it's, and that's not just network marketing, it's entrepreneurship as a wholesale concept, whether it's people pleasing, or whether it's workaholism, or whether it's like hustling for your worth, or whether it's, beliefs about how people are, or whether or not you are the worthy of influence or money or whatever. It will break all that wide open. And that's the point. The
Yeah.
process is the point. That is the point. And if you miss that, and if you skip over it just to get to the goal, then you're missing what you're there for. And the other thing that I think is so critical to point out is that you mentioned, like, when you have a goal, when you have something that you want, there's a reason why you want that, and it's because of how you think it's going to make you feel.
Mhm.
But you have total control over how you feel right now. And you can feel that thing and deal with all the things blocking you from feeling that in this moment. And that will actually hasten the arrival or the manifestation, if you will, of that goal into your life.
Yeah. I think what sometimes is hard for people in entrepreneurship and network marketing, people that have big goals, is it's really easy, especially if you're very ambitious, to look at this big macro vision of where you want to go, this big goal that feels very unattainable. And because we live in this instant gratification society of like Amazon Prime, get it yesterday, like we celebrate the quicker that we get to some arbitrary goal, we
Mhm.
struggle because there's a big distance between where we are now and where we want to go.
Yeah.
And we don't consciously label that space as something that actually serves us. We don't understand the need for the distance between where we are now and where we want to go. We label it as like overwhelming or intimidating. We start looking around at other people thinking that they
Or
have
it's going to
something that we
take too
don't.
long.
Exactly. And what's so interesting is, I help a lot of podcasters in this space, and I was doing a group call with a bunch of podcasters that want to grow, scale, and monetize. And I asked them, I was like, how many of you would love to have 1 million downloads on your podcast this month? And the chat goes wild. They're like, yeah, Keish, like I'd love that, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, that's interesting. Because for sake of reference, my podcast, Empower Her, gets about 250,000 downloads a month at the time of this recording. And I said to them, I do want to get to the point that it's making that amount of impact for my show, for example, but I don't want that yet. And the key word is yet. And it's actually figuring out how to really, in your mind, understand the need for that space between where you are now and where you want to go, because that's your qualification period. So that when you get where you want to go, you are qualified to handle it. Because what happens is we look at the shiny thing of like, oh, if I have this many people listening to my podcast and that could drive into this much impact and this much income and blah, 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 whatever we make that mean. But I also know that with any type of goal, there's also the problems associated with that goal, not in a negative way, just in a very like honest way. Is
Yep.
can I personally handle the amount of feedback that I'm going to get that won't also be positive with 1 million downloads a month? I can handle the negative feedback that might come with 250,000 downloads a month because not everybody's going to vibe with you. But can I yet handle as a person that type of feedback? To be honest, not yet. Am I learning in real time? Hell yeah. So that I can actually maintain it when it gets there. And I think about like the back end of my business. I can't give people the type of, support and the connective tissue that I want to give them when they listen into the show or want to join my programs, because I don't have the back end of my business set up to maintain that amount of people going in. And
Mhm.
I don't say this to scare people that are like trying to stay comfortable, even though as humans, we're wired to want to stay in our familiar thought patterns in our comfort zone. But it's just to remind you that like where you are, to your point, Amy, is like, it's exactly where you need to be to learn what you need to learn. Because if you got it really quickly, not only could you not maintain it, but you would be robbing yourself of all of the confidence building along the way. You'd be
Yes.
robbing yourself of the deep pride that you want to have, knowing that you earned it. Because anything that's just handed to you and it's easy, it robs you of proud, and it robs you of the fulfillment that I know you're actually craving as a person if you're someone listening into the show who has big goals and visions for her life, you know?
I love that. And how many of the goals that women set are actually an effort to prove to the world that they're worthy.
Yeah, so real.
And when you, it's such a hall of mirrors, because when you get to the goal and you realize, oh, I still feel unworthy,
Yep.
like that's ultimate. Honestly, like speaking from experience, that's like almost ultimate failure. Is Tony Robbins says that is like success without fulfillment is ultimate failure. So if what you want is to feel worthy, and you think hitting this benchmark is going to give you the feeling of worthiness, I'm here to tell you it won't. You have to do that work internally, and the process is how you build that muscle. The process is how you change your mind. The process is how you develop the strength in the muscles. And honestly, I've had to sit more with failure and think, who am I when I'm not producing a result?
Yes.
Who am I when I'm changing a diaper, or,
Yeah.
like feeding kids lunch and nobody sees what I'm doing and nobody's paying me for what I'm doing? Who am I when I'm sick, or when I'm tired, or when I can't perform? And that's that place right there. Although those aren't comfortable or fun questions to ask and sit with, that's where you develop the grit that you are worthy, no matter what your bank account number is, no matter how many people download your podcast, no
Yes.
matter how many people tune in or tell you. And honestly, I think the most toxic thing for anyone in leadership, but especially women, is when they're taking that question of, am I good enough? Do I have what it takes? Am I worthy? To their calling, because then it's not about the people you're there to help. It's about you. And
Yep.
you're not there to serve, you're there to be served. And that is so toxic, because people feel, people can
Yep.
feel your energy and your intent, and that will, it's a negative feedback loop, right? Like when you're trying to get something to tell you that you're worthy, and it feels like, your business or the people that you're leading feel that you're trying to get something from them, they resist it, and then and then you're in conflict and you feel horrible, and you're just reinforcing the false belief. I mean, spoiler alert, everybody's worthy. Whether
Yeah.
you know it or believe it
Yeah.
or not, you're worthy, because you're a child of God and you're made and created and on purpose, and every human is worthy. Doesn't matter. But until like you mentioned, you can know it cognitively, but until you like know it, then you're going to not really be ultimately successful in those positions when you reach those goals,
Yeah.
because you can't be convinced of your worth from the outside. Bottom line.
And also, like, energetically for yourself to love like your Tuesdays, it's asking yourself, how many things am I doing to get it done versus doing to do it? Because your experience of like showing up in a very authentic way that like feels aligned for you, not only will other people recognize that because people can see right through it, like inauthenticity, but also like it just feels better. And you find that it then becomes like a not a quantity problem, but like a quality problem of what is the
Yes.
depth of connection. And I think there's this obsession with growth, which is so interesting, because I do like helping women grow as people and grow in their businesses. But the obsession of growth, I think, needs to be a question of like, how can I have more depth? How can I have more depth of connection with the people that are in my community? Because like, even, helping so many women in the podcasting space and in the business space, right? Where it's like, okay, if I have more followers, then I'm going to have more blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, if you just like nurture the people that you have right now and make sure that they know that they are appreciated and loved genuinely by you, that goes so much further than if you're just like, let me just try and go viral. Let me just like focus on all this, vanity metrics. It's like, does that actually feel good Do you feel like you're in alignment? Because I don't know about you, but when it doesn't feel in alignment for me and I start to feel that resistance, I know.
Yeah.
And other people can feel it because there's so many people out there doing this. It's like, what's your competitive advantage? What if it's that you just keep it real? That instead of trying to act so polished and instead of trying to hide the things that you perceive as flaws or weaknesses, you say, let me pull back the curtain and actually have more of this narrative with my community, with the people that I want to serve, of like, come with me. I'm going to be real with you because I get it. And I truly, deeply care about helping you. People
Yeah.
can tell. It's like sales, the most effective sales strategy is like the no sell, like, honestly, of just like, I care and I want to help you and I'm in this with you.
Right. I have a background, it's a long background in corporate sales training, sales and marketing, sales management, curriculum development for sales training. And there's all this honest, just crap out there, about like, closing and overcoming objections and all of the basic manipulations, verbal gymnastics to like convince or get someone to buy from you. And none of that nonsense is necessary when you truly show up and you know who you are and you know what you have to offer and you want to serve people. You just explain to them how you can help them and then they buy from you. It's
Yeah.
really that simple. But it has to do, you talked about growth, and there's, I guess, two ways to look at growth. You could look at like the growth of your numbers or the growth of your metrics or the key performance indicators or whatever, or you could look at the growth of your character.
Yeah.
And for me, like, and I feel like this is true for everybody, but the character development is what will create that deep resonance with your audience, where they know that you're not coming to them to be like, here, buy my thing so that I can pay my mortgage, or so that I can hit this rank, or so that I can get this award, or so that I can feel good about myself. It's actually like, I have this product and it will really help your life, and take it
Mm-hmm.
or leave it. I want you to have it because I want you to be served by it. But if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. And that's when you go from like pursuit to attraction, is when you
Yes.
develop the internal calibration, if you will, your character and your true motivation to serve. It's a buzzword and it's all over the place, is showing up to serve, showing up to serve. But are you really, like, what's
Yeah.
really inside of you? And that character growth comes from, again, I feel like we come back to this sort of central topic here of like the process being the point.
Yep.
Like you get that character building through the process. So one of the
Yeah.
questions I have for you, Keisha, is this is something I hear a lot as a coach, is like, well, I know that I'm worthy, but I don't feel worthy. Or, like, I don't, it's up here, or but it's not like here. Can you talk a little bit about your process? Because you mentioned a few things that you knew cognitively, but you didn't really get. Can you talk a little bit about your process of how to get it from the head to the heart, kind of?
Yeah. Yeah. So I do think like at the root of entrepreneurship is this beautiful opportunity to build confidence in yourself. And I know you led into confidence of being problem solving, but I think of it even on like a more simplistic manner of like, if confidence is a bucket and every single time that you show up and keep a promise to yourself to do the thing that feels aligned for you or to
Mhm.
do the thing that you said that you're going to do, it's like you're putting a deposit into your bucket. And it doesn't have to be just about like production and your productivity being your worth, but it's just about keeping promises of how you want to show up in certain situations. So,
Yes.
for example, like I think of how are there certain habits in my day that I can stack something on that's going to get me closer to where I'm going to be, like habit stacking basics, right? That's going to get me closer to the person that I want to be. So every morning when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm priming my brain to think about what I'm excited about for the day. Because I think as humans, and there's a lot of like, talk about this in psychology, especially in positive psychology, that you're not responsible for your first thought because you get to have that one for free. Like you woke up, you're like, man, I like that. This is sucky. Like I didn't sleep well, or like my toddler's doing whatever. And I blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. That's a freebie. You can think whatever you want to think, especially even women like with your body image. That
Right.
first thought, okay, it's free. But the second one, you're taking radical responsibility for that. It's the type of person and how you want to show up, what type of energy and like what type of you-ness you want to bring to the day. So for example, when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm priming my brain to think like, what am I excited about for today? Like, how do I want to show up for the day? And just getting myself into that state. And then at the end of the day, because I'm always brushing my teeth, and my husband actually used to be a dentist, so we are about the full sonic hair rotation. We do not like hit the button early, and like we do the full thing. So it gives me some time to do this. Where at the end of the day, I'm literally doing this to build up my own confidence and belief in my ability to figure things out and navigate whatever life throws at me. Is every single day during that time, I'm not looking at my phone or doing anything. I'm literally saying, what am I proud of myself for? And it can never be tied to an action that I took that society would clap for, of like, oh,
Mm,
you accomplished that. You did that website copy. Good for you.
yeah.
Instead, for me, I struggle with concentrating on things that are boring to me. I think I might have ADHD, but I struggle on that. If I'm excited about it, I can get into the zone. But for me, sitting down to do website copy honestly feels like I'm taking a fork and shoving it into my eyeball.
Yeah.
So when I'm telling myself that I'm proud, I'm like, I'm proud of you for raising the necessity to do something that needed to get done so that you could make the impact that you want to make. You focused, you stayed in the zone, and like you proved to yourself that you are capable of focusing on something like that for 2 hours. Good for you. And then I go on to the next thing. So I'm literally taking something that's so small, because honestly, I think sometimes we can get really overwhelmed when we hear people talk about even like their morning routine is like journal and take a 5 minute cold shower, and then you have to like go work out, and then you have to meditate, and then you have to do, I'm like, oh, your gratitude list. I'm like, I'm never going to get like, I don't even know how that's possible. Especially I'm not a mom, but I'm thinking of moms with young kids. Like, how do you do that? Like, so I just try and take things down to like a very simplistic way of focusing on the root of, let me just focus on building confidence in myself. Because if I believe in myself, I'm going to believe that I'm worthy. I'm going to physically feel it. And for the people that are still in that cognitive, like I think that I'm worthy, I want to say that I'm worthy because it sounds good, but I don't actually believe it. Sometimes we actually do need this proof that we can look at of like, hey, I am the type of person who does the thing that I said that I'm going to do. And it could be drink your water. And it
Right.
could be, like have a tough conversation with someone. It could be kinder in this situation. Like it can be that type of like thing to give yourself some tactical proof. Cause I think there are a lot of people that want to come from a heart-centered place and they want to feel it in their body, but they're struggling to make that connection. So I like to think about like, what tactically can I also do to give myself those little dopamine hits and kind of start moving in the right direction? Does that make sense?
I absolutely. And I actually wrote 3 things down that you said that I really want to highlight for the audience. Is that the first thing is I feel like you probably have read it because you're speaking the language, but James Clear's Atomic Habits.
Oh, I love that book.
I love
Yes.
that book. That's one of those, I mean, I'm a obsessed reader, but that's one of those books that I go back to over and over and over again. It really changed the way that I think and changed my mindset and how I show up for my business and my life. But he talks about, like just the 1% improvement, just the 1% improvement. And so often, like when we, get to the end of the day and you're like, I was busy all day and I did nothing. Well, is that really true? Like, did you move 1% towards your goal? And then you can focus on that and celebrate it and let that get bigger and
Yes.
let that take center stage then rather than focusing on what you didn't do right and really anchoring that feeling in. And the other thing is like in a relationship, and this, I think this is so important for women to hear, and you said it, but I'm going to repeat it because it's so important. In a relationship, how is trust built? Trust doesn't just show up. How is trust built? Well, trust is built by observing somebody's character and behavior every day in and day out, over and over and over again, till you know that that person is trustworthy. And it's no different than your relationship with yourself. In fact, if you can't trust yourself, you're not going to be able, well, obviously other people can't trust you, but you're not going to be able to trust anybody else either. And then you get the Lone Ranger syndrome where you're out there just wondering why you're so lonely and unfulfilled. It's because you have to build those bonds with other people, but it starts with building them with yourself. Well, how do you show up? How do you build trust with yourself? Is you do what you say you're going to do. You don't make promises to yourself. You don't betray yourself. When you set a boundary, you hold the boundary and you build trust little by little. So I can connect those two concepts of the 1% increase. That's, I'm a recovering codependent and people pleaser. And so I will look at that and be like, did I get 1% better with setting and
Yeah.
holding boundaries, with keeping promises to myself? Did I get 1% better at saying no when it's honestly a no in my heart? Like maybe I
Yes.
did say yes. Maybe I did do something I didn't want to do. Maybe I did do a little people pleasing today, but was there any evidence at all that I
Yeah.
made 1% progress on something, on who I really want to be and how I want to show up? And then the last thing, go ahead.
Love that. No, I love like thinking about that concept, especially with like so many women can probably connect with having people pleasing tendencies
Yes.
and wanting to wear this like busy like a badge of honor and wanting to say like I can do it, take it on because we want to make everybody else happy. But it's really interesting because I like to reframe this concept of asking for help, especially for people that struggle with people pleasing, is we all know, anyone listening into this, you know how good it feels to help somebody else. So
Yes.
you're telling yourself the story of, I don't want to ask my sister, my friend, my mother-in-law, whatever, for help with the kids, for help with this, to help with this in my business, because I don't want to quote unquote burden them. That's the
Right.
narrative that so many people say. But to that, I say, flip it around. Are you robbing your mother-in-law, your sister, your friend, the opportunity to get the
100%.
fulfillment that you get from helping
Yes.
someone else if you don't let them help you?
So important.
And when you're carrying all that weight on your shoulder of like, look at me, I'm Superwoman. I'm not inspired by Superwoman because I'm like, I don't want to have that life where you constantly
No,
are saying yes to everything else and you're hanging on by a thread. And the people that actually matter to you are put on the back burner
getting
because
the
you're
work.
saying yes to someone in your job that you would just be replaced if you decided to quit,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I had a conversation with my mother this morning about
Yeah.
Mother's Day, and she said, "Don't get me any presents." And I said, "Well, too late. I already got your present, and the kids got your present." She's like, "Oh, but I don't need anything, and don't get me anything." And I said, "It's not about you needing anything. It's about the joy that we get in giving
Yes.
to you, and the joy that we get in spoiling you. So just take it, get with the program because this is happening." She
Yeah.
laughed. That's a wonderful way to reframe your mindset around, like not asking for help, not accepting help. Is it
Yeah.
That's when people feel the most fulfilled, is when they're able to show up for you. And that's how you build trust too. You have to let somebody show up for you before you
Yes.
can build the trust. It's not just about how whether they show up or not. Are you letting them show up for you?
Yeah.
And then
And
you mentioned something else. Go ahead.
no, you go.
Well, you mentioned something else that I think is so powerful and critical for women to hear. And it was kind of tucked in what you were saying around some other things. But she talked about how much you hate writing web copy and
Mm.
how you have difficulty showing up for tasks that are boring for you.
Mm-hmm.
And there is this perception, there's all the talk about like alignment and manifestation and follow your bliss. And I run into a lot of times with coaching, especially in business coaching, is just like, well, that doesn't feel good, so I'm not going to do it. And I'm just like, oh, it's a sticky wicket, because yes, but also no. Like you do need to be in alignment with where you want to get to, but there's going to be some scratchy, uncomfortable,
Unsexy, mundane, boring
unsexy,
stuff.
boring things that you're going to have to do on the road. And I would really love, especially with your generation, Keisha, because like
Yeah.
that's like the self-sabotage du jour, I think, is just like, well, that doesn't feel good, so that's out of alignment, so I'm going to sit here and I'm going to manifest. And it's like, great, get yourself into emotional alignment with your desire, but then you have to do the work, and the work is sometimes
Mhm.
really ugh, like not fun. Can you just
Yeah.
take that and run with it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because I think there's this like form of almost like this like entitlement feeling of like, well, I should only get to do the things that feel right for me. Or people start a business and they want to be able to outsource everything that they don't like straight out the gates. And full transparency, I can outsource a lot of stuff that I'm not good at this stage. But a prior version of me was not in the financial place to do that. And I think there's a lot of importance, if you want to be an entrepreneur, to understand how to do the things that you're outsourcing. And
Mhm.
also, it's kind of taking this responsibility, I think, for the things that bug us in the world or the things that we don't think are being represented the way that we want them to, that it's our job to then be the representation of it. So I take the weight on my shoulders of showing like, sometimes entrepreneurship is not sexy. Despite all of these people that are showing themselves in their bikinis with their laptops, we know you can't see your screen when it's sunny. You're not working on the beach. Like, we all know that, right? And it's like, I think it bothers me so much because with any goal, like we kind of touched on before, there's problems associated with the goal. You just have to pick the problems that you want more. I'll pick the problems of having to navigate sitting down and doing some of these things because I need to learn this, or because it needs to be written in my voice and I need to do that.
Yeah.
Because the other problem alternative was sitting in my corporate job that on paper made sense, that I felt so unfulfilled, and I had to live by somebody else's standards of what success was. And I had to sit at my desk until 5 o'clock until I could leave. And that was soul sucking to me. But the problems mean that sometimes I have to show up when I don't want to, or when it doesn't feel good, because that's just part of the full spectrum of being an entrepreneur. You don't just get the wins. So whenever someone's thinking about goals for the future, I always like to challenge them to also think, as much of an enthusiastic person that I am for life, I also want you to understand, what are the problems that you're picking with that too? Because it comes together, and not in a negative way, but in like a, let me just take full ownership for the full spectrum of the goal. If you want to get healthy, that means you're not going to be able to eat cake and drink margaritas every single night, right? Can you do that, like, in moderation? Yeah, I'm sure you can, but it's more so like, do I want the problems, which is going to be the uncomfortable feeling that I feel when I want to go for that, but I know that it's not aligned for where I want to go, for me to feel confident and strong and whatever. Same with entrepreneurship. Do you want the problems that when other people get off of their corporate job and they can completely unplug and leave it at work because they don't care about what they're doing, but you still have to work on it at night? But you then get to gift your future self the opportunity to have more flexibility and freedom. You have to do that part. Nobody gets to skip that stage, despite the narrative that's put out there, especially from my generation and people in their 20s, about entrepreneurship, because it seems so sexy, but it's hard too. But that's also why, what we've been even talking about, that's why it's so fulfilling, because it is also the contrast that you get to feel the full spectrum of being a human by being in this space.
I love that. It's always, I feel that fitness analogies are always so apropos and so relatable, but it's like the pain that ends the pain, like there's pain associated with being out of shape and being unhealthy. Well, there's also pain. I do CrossFit 5 times a week, and let me tell you, there's pain associated with CrossFit, and there's pain associated with counting out what I eat and making sure that my workouts are fueled. And it takes a lot of mental energy, and it takes effort, but the payoff for that is a body that's healthy and that I feel confident in and that I feel good about. And so, which pain do you want? Do you want the pain of discipline, or do you want the pain of regret, basically, of having the result of something that you didn't choose? And that's where the whole concept of choice and being intentional about what you're choosing comes in. And just exactly what you said is that Simon Sinek says that or it might not be, he has a book called Start With Why. And I'm not sure who said this quote, but he either references it or he said it, is that if you know the why, you can put up with any how. If you know the why, you can put up with any how. So you do need to intentionally choose your why, and maybe even your what, and be aligned with that. But the how is something else entirely. Like even in marketing, if you're selling, workouts, or if you're selling whatever nutrition plans, you're not going to sit there and be like, well, you're going to have to count your fat grams and you're going to have to run a mile. No, you sell the results, you sell the thing that people want. But in that culture of marketing to the pleasure that you're going to get or the pain that you're going to avoid, it's just wise to be able to consider what it's going to cost you and what you're going to have to do, maybe that you don't want to do, to get to the thing that you do want to have. And that is so important. And I love that you talked about the juxtaposition between, corporate and entrepreneurship, because that's what, people are like, I want to be my own boss. Do you really? Because I'm the one up at 2 a.m. when the web server crashes, not my
Yes.
team. My team is sound asleep in their beds. I'm the
Yeah.
one that's up on the phone. I'm the one that's figuring out how to make all the finances work and to pay for all the things. And I'm the one that if it, doesn't work, I'm the one that deals with the consequences when somebody's angry. Guess who comes? It's not my team. It's not my employees. It's on
Mhm.
me. So when
Yep.
you pick up, I tell this to my kids all the time, when a choice and a consequence are two ends of the same stick. So when you pick up the choice, you pick up the consequence.
I
And
love
if
that.
you want entrepreneurship, you're picking up all of the burdens that go with it. But if you really know why you want entrepreneurship, then you're willing to take ownership and to embrace the difficulty to get you where you really want to go in life. It's so powerful.
Mhm. Yeah. And tapping into that why, like for me, it's always like, who else is going to benefit as a byproduct? Who's going to be negatively impacted if I don't? And
Mhm.
how can I develop and strengthen this relationship with the future version of me, thinking about the gifts that I'm going to give her if I continue to show up?
Yes.
And what she would be missing out on, like an opportunity cost lens on it. Cause we talk about the cost a lot. Like, what's
Mhm.
the cost to start the thing? What's it, how, what am I going to have to navigate to get where I want to go? Well, like, what are you not going to have if you don't
Yes.
do it?
Oh,
Right?
it's
Like the
good.
impact, the fulfillment, the joy, the income, the opportunities, the choices for your family, for your future, if
Mhm.
you don't figure this out. Like, we just have to figure out, especially as entrepreneurs, we got to figure out how to raise the necessity to show up, to navigate through the murky crap
Yeah.
feeling that
Yep.
sometimes we have to navigate. Because it's going to pay off. And I think I like to even kind of toggle to this future version of me of like, what gifts am I giving her? And then I even toggle back to this prior version of me, which is like, wow, look at what you did for her. She's so grateful for you and how you showed up and the opportunities that you gifted her because you navigated through the things that would have been so easy to throw in the towel on, but you
Yeah.
chose not to. And when you have that relationship with a past where you can feel proud of yourself, because even for women listening into this that maybe they're starting a business and it's their first business, so they don't have, like you, Amy, the track record to look back on of like, oh, I had this successful career, or I did this business first and now I'm in this business and I'm seeing success. That they don't have that to look back on and see, say, see, last time I did this, it worked out, so I've got this confidence in my ability to figure this out. But
Mhm.
if they are doing something right now, it's like I have so many women that come to me that are like, I'm scared to start a podcast or I'm scared to build this business. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you birthed two humans out of your hoo-ha. Are you kidding me? That sounds way harder than starting a podcast. Like, I haven't done that, but it's like you've done something hard in the past. And anyone listening into this right now, I'm sure if you're like cruising around on, driving in your car, you can think back to a time that you ran into an obstacle. You had no idea how you were going to figure it out. But to your point, Amy, the why was strong enough that you had to figure it out. And guess what? Here you are on the other side, better
Yes.
even probably because of it. So it's all part of it. And I love this whole conversation.
I do too. And it's like, I talk to women, who are just, they're like, oh, I don't know about starting a business and I don't know, blah, 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 if I'll show up or if I, basically I'm paraphrasing, but, if I can trust myself or if I'll be successful and I'm scared. But yet they're working their guts out for a large multinational corporation that they're just a number in. And it's like, why can you show up for that person or that entity's dream and not your own dream? Like, why wouldn't you give at least as much effort to your own dream as you will to show up? And the reason is because there's an external force acting on you. And even with childbirth, I can say from experience that once that thing is in you, it's only going, it has to come out, there's there's no there
Like,
is
oh,
no
this is coming out.
any
There's no way
other way.
around
Yeah,
it.
it's like it's coming out. So there would be many times during the pregnancy or birth process that I would have liked to have been like, just kidding, I quit, but it's like you can't. It's happening. This is happening.
Yes.
So
So
Tony
true.
Robbins, big fan. But he says if you want to take the islands, burn the boats.
Yeah.
And there's so much power in commitment. There's so much power in saying, like, this is like, I'm going to find a way or make a way. Like, this is what I'm doing. This is the direction I'm going. You cut off all of the other options and you just do it. And that's why women can show up for childbirth, is because they're basically forced to. And that's why women or men even can show up for a corporate job and meet all of their criteria, because there's this external force. And so one of the keys of entrepreneurship is to learn to exert that force internally from the inside out. And to do that, going back to, you have to really connect with your why and your future self and what this is going to afford you for the future.
Yeah.
So I love this conversation too. And I am just so pleased and refreshed and just uplifted by having been able to have it with you. Is there anything else that you feel like you need to add
No,
before we wrap?
I just think it's amazing like how you're showing up with such a transparent lens to your community. And I think for women that are listening into this, it's reminding yourself that like this imperfect version of you that's trying to figure it out and what you're navigating right now, that like somebody actually really does need to hear it from you. And like you can look at comparing yourself to another person and you can think that they're more qualified or that they are further along or whatever, but it's like I want to learn from someone that gets me and I feel like they understand me. So to you that are maybe an introvert listening into this and you're telling yourself this narrative of why you can't do this because this other person is a different personality, it's like no, like you are going to connect with the people that you're supposed to connect with. You just have to be more open and get out of your own way and actually put yourself out there. And like what a beautiful gift it is to give to yourself from the fulfillment and the impact and the income and all the things, but also to the world, because everybody's gifted a different vision for their life. And I think it's our responsibility to figure out how to get out of our own way and gift that back to the world. It's our jobs here. So like you don't have this idea on your heart for you to just like push it to the side. And your sister and your mom and the other woman that your kid plays baseball with, they don't have the same vision. So of course they're not going to totally understand you, and maybe they don't even believe in you because they can only give their own like advice from their own experience. So like take that radical responsibility and do ask yourself, what can I do in the next 24 hours to move the needle forward? Like get that dopamine hit and go, because you're capable and you're worthy.
I love that. And the beauty of it is too, is like, I'm guessing you're an extrovert. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
And yep. And I have seen that in past versions of myself. I've seen that as a major drawback in sales and marketing, and especially social media, because I tend to like to not be, I like to be private more. That's more my comfort zone. But the beauty of that is that we get to surround ourselves with people that are different than us, people that are stronger in areas where we might be weaker, or people who are gifted in areas where we maybe aren't. And that's the beauty of community. And so the other thing that I would say, to add on to what you said, is to also embrace who you are and how you're made to be, and then surround yourself with people that are sort of like the puzzle pieces that fit into the areas that are sort of maybe missing or empty, where you might be strong. Collaborate with people where you might be weak. I love hanging out with extroverts because I like to talk to people, and but I'm not going to walk up, like that's just not my personality. But when I'm with an extroverted friend, they get the conversation started, and then I have something to add. And that's the beauty of collaboration. You're not meant to do this alone. And I feel like that's such an epidemic, is isolation in entrepreneurship. So not only, do you have what it takes, but you also don't have what it takes. And that's okay, because there are other people that do. And that's the beauty of being able to combine and collaborate. So Keisha, tell us how our audience can get a hold of you. Do you have anything coming up that we can participate in?
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. So my favorite social media platform is Instagram. It's at Kacia, Kacia.Fitzgerald. My podcast is called Empower Her. It's a Monday, Thursday podcast. And then if you happen to be someone who is wanting to start a podcast or grow, scale, and monetize an existing podcast, I have a lot of podcasting programs. And we're hosting our first live event, which is an empowerment event for women. We've got like killer keynote speakers. It's going to be 500 women from all across the country in Phoenix, Arizona in October 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. So that's what we're working on right now. And again, I'm so happy we're connected, and thank you so much for this beautiful conversation.
Likewise.
I'm so happy to know you.
Thank you. And we'll make sure that we have links to all of that when the episode airs. So
perfect.
All right, that's it for this episode of the Rise to Reign podcast. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.